Conversation.
How did I relearn English? Luckily for me, this cargo ship full of TV has crashed on the sandbar.
Hello, and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
Ekum bokum, I hardly know him. I'm Nick Prol.
Oh, yes, we're talking about Mumbo Jumbo tonight, Nick. Why? Because fuck it. It's been a while since we've done anything related to Banjo-Kazooie as well. So it's nice. It's nice to get back into Banjo's world. Before we get to Mumbo Jumbo himself, let's first do some due diligence. DK Vine is on Patreon, so check us out, dkvine.com/Patreon. Your money will help buy better equipment. For example, with your generous donations, whenever I plug the Patreon, I can buy microphones that will reduce the noise when I pop my peas. So dkvine.com/Patreon. As far as the Kongversation, which is what you're listening to, never forget that you can call us at 1-202-630-VINE, Vine, or 8463, as it's more commonly known on your phone. And that will connect you to the DK Vine hotline. You can leave a message, and if we like what we hear, we'll play that message on the show. So 1-202-630-VINE.
DK Vine hotline, never forget.
Subscribe to the Kongversation on iTunes. Rate us on iTunes. And you can also check us out on TuneIn, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Don't forget to tell your friends about the show, especially if it's Fabio. You know we want to get Fabio on the Kongversation, Nick. We've been trying. Well, when I say we've been trying, we've been pleading at the beginning of every Kongversation. So far, that's not working. Maybe we're going to have to come up with a bigger plan to get Fabio's attention.
Maybe we could actually try contacting him.
You know, that's too much work.
True.
And quite frankly, we don't get enough from the Patreon to justify that level of effort. So for now, no, I'm not going to do that. But if anybody has any wonderful, lazy ideas for how we can get in touch with Mr. Fabio, I assume it's a Bear situation, and his last name is also Fabio.
Yeah.
Let us know, because I am open to anything that wouldn't require me to get up out of my chair or really talk to any human being. So if you can come up with something, let us know. Fabio, man. Fabio. I want to hear what he has to say about Diddy Kong Racing's 20th anniversary, because I think he could bring some really stellar insight.
He might be able to. I mean,
nobody's ever asked him about Diddy Kong Racing. How do we know? For all we know, he was the voice of the giggling children at the beginning of the game.
He could have been. Let's keep Kazooie away from him.
That could have been the sound it makes when he bounces his pecs. That could have been like children laughing because it's just so magical.
Wow, that's an interesting thought there.
It's an interesting, arousing thought. It's a wet thought. You know, you've heard of wet dreams. I like to give wet thoughts.
Wet thoughts were really good at Coachella last year.
No, you already have a band, Nick, but maybe that's a
side project. Wet thoughts.
Side project, right? Yeah, that could. You know, because we have a lot, you know, you, Matt, there are talented musicians working for DK Vine, namely you and Matt. So I could always play the triangle like Chunky Kong, you know, wet thoughts. Come on.
Electric triangle, just triangle, and vocals. That'd be pretty cool.
It would be something, yeah. Anyway, hashtag bring back the spiders, which could be the name of our first album for Wet Thoughts. And don't forget, you can have wet thoughts all the time when you play Sea of Thieves. Join the Sea of Thieves Insider program at seaofthieves.com/insider. And the reason I plug this every time we do due diligence
is to rub it in.
Because I'm in it and you're not. There is that. But also because I want you to actually play the game with me. And while I can lord it over you for the time being, it's not like I can actually talk about the game because I'm under an NDA. Anybody who's playing the game in the technical alpha is under an NDA. And I want to experience the game with people sans NDA. So I love playing with people. I love playing Sea of Thieves with DK Viners. So please sign up. And, we're doing this thing now where anybody active in the DK Vine community, we will, and if you're in the technical alpha, we'll try to coordinate times to play. It's something that's really just indescribable until you experience it. No offense, Nick. So I really, really want more people to get the opportunity that I've had for a year now. No offense, Nick. And
this has given me flashbacks of kindergarten when I was the only one who hadn't had sex yet.
Oh, they grow up so fast these days. SeaofThieves.com/insider. So just sign up. You'll get into the technical alpha eventually. No offense, Nick. And
hashtag no offense,
we'll
Nick.
Play together. All right. Well, let's circle back before Sea of Thieves to a rare game you have been able to play, and that is the Banjo-Kazooie and the Banjo-Kazooie series. And I think it's safe to say that the breakout star of Banjo-Kazooie, as far as like the character that really caught on with the fan base when the game came out. Well, for some people, sure. But for people who are well-adjusted, it was Mumbo Jumbo.
I agree.
It's hard to like mentally think back and put yourself into the summer of 1998 and a little bit of time beforehand when the game was going to come out. But there are like characters that like strike it big. And then over the years afterwards, we kind of forget the initial attachment we had to them for whatever reason, either through them not being utilized as much or through just various decisions.
Never forget.
It can be that a character kind of loses their luster over time. And I'm not going to say Mumbo Jumbo has lost his luster, but I think
he lost his upper jaw. I know that.
I think it's easy to forget that at a time, Mumbo Jumbo was probably the most popular character in Banjo-Kazooie, and now it would probably be Banjo and Kazooie.
I didn't know that.
There's a reason they made him playable in Banjo-Tooie.
True.
And I would say, Conker's Bad Fur Day for a while. Among the rare fan circles, it was probably Greg who was the breakout star.
Pretty much any skull-based character.
People love skull-based characters.
It's weird.
Right?
As I look at Mumbo now, I'm just so used to seeing him. I kind of take for granted how crazy of a character design he has for like a cutesy game,
He's fucking weird.
Yeah.
He's a weirdo in general, not just
him.
in his design. But we'll get into all aspects of Mumbo in this. A brief history, the life story of Mumbo Jumbo. So, Nick, I think the best way to start would be to read the blurb that was provided for Mr. Jumbo in the original Banjo-Kazooie instruction manual from 1998. So before we had any additional in-game lore tacked on, this is the bare basics Rare provided us with. If you're like me and you read the instruction manual front to back before you actually played the game, this would be how Rare properly introduced you to Mumbo Jumbo. Would you care to read this little paragraph?
Why, of course. Any voice choice? Should I go Mumbo, or is that offensive?
Should you make noises like Grant Kirkhope? Considering he's blocked us on Twitter, I don't want to upset him further. But then again, he won't find out, so yeah, go for it.
A former teacher of Gruntilda's, this mysterious shaman was betrayed by his pupil before he could prevent her from putting his magic to bad use. The witch transformed Mumbo's face into a mask of horror to maintain that way until the day she's overthrown. Ikamboka.
That was really good, and it's interesting that you actually took the sound effects, the Banjo-Kazooie vocal sound effects, and you contextualized that into an actual voice. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's how Mumbo Jumbo sounds. That's how he would sound if I could actually hear his words. So I don't know if you can do that with every Banjo character. We've had this discussion.
Yeah.
Like, what would Kazooie sound like? And it's something I don't think we've really settled on.
I don't want to do the vocal fry of that tonight. It might hurt my throat.
That in that blurb, it said that not only did Mumbo teach Gruntilda the Obi-Wan to her Darth Vader, but she was the one who, quote, transformed Mumbo's face into a mask of horror to remain that way until the day she's overthrown.
So it's sort of reversed, like Obi-Wan left Anakin to be transformed into horror, but in this one, the Anakin transformed the Master.
There we go. But there's only one problem, though. None of that happened as portrayed in the games. So you beat Gruntilda at the end of Banjo-Kazooie, and Mumbo's face remained exactly the same.
But she wasn't truly overthrown yet. She was still alive.
Well, the instruction manual also doesn't say, after you murder her by snapping her neck.
Man of Steel style.
Man of Steel style. Henry Cavill, yeah. So...
I will find him! Sorry, doing a little Michael Shannon there.
Yeah, that was pretty good, because I really remember every line from Man of Steel.
Just that one. Just the overacting ones.
The only line I remember from Man of Steel is Pa Kent holding out his hand so he could get killed by a tornado.
Don't save me, son. I'm going off to Waterworld.
I hope in the Man of Steel sequel, he visits him as a ghost so Clark Kent can build a softball field.
That'd be beautiful. If you build it, they will, well, that's a little inappropriate, but,
I think the fan wank we came up with for this, I came up with this fan wank, I remember back in the summer of 98, this is a year before DK Vine even, was that because Gruntilda did not actually die, Mumbo's visage remained the same.
Or he just got used to it and was like, I kind of like this.
Well, there's another aspect to this, though, Nick, and that's Mumbo. The way it makes it sound like an instruction manual is that he's not actually wearing a mask, that she transformed his face into his skull. But that doesn't add up because we've seen him wear different variations of the skull. In Banjo-Kazooie, of course, he's wearing a half skull, which I like to think he wears for the summer months because it's a little bit cooler, keeps the back of his head ventilated.
He's a hero in a half skull.
Where in Banjo-Tooie, Onward, he's wearing this full skull, almost like a skull helmet that covers himself 360 degrees. So he can clearly take this thing off and back on. And it's also
not really. He could have just... maybe he can't take off the half skull, but he added a back portion.
So you're thinking layers? Like he just is like a Russian nesting doll of skulls?
Yeah, the next time we see him, he'll have no eyes.
That sounds entirely uncomfortable. As somebody who cannot even wear a sweater in winter because it's too constraining, that just mortifies me. And I will not accept that in my personal canon.
Fair enough. But yeah, and also in the second game, like his upper jaw row of teeth is just gone. He looks like a nutcracker.
Well, it was released for the winter holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, what have you. So maybe it was supposed to be seasonally appropriate. I mean, he still has an upper jaw, kind of.
He has a jaw, just no teeth on the top.
He's got teeth on the top.
Does he really?
On the render, he does, yeah.
Let's see.
You're probably right. I think on the lower mouth, the teeth are less pronounced.
Okay, I mean the in-game model, he has no upper teeth.
Oh, okay. Because I always think of the renders, but the in-game model. It's funny because the in-game model is what you stare at from the majority of the time when you actually play the game, but then throughout the years you associate the game with the actual promotional renders. So
as much as I adore Banjo-Tooie and like in many ways it improved upon the first one, the first game's model of Mumbo will always be the best.
I agree. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. He looks like he's like a grandpa who's going to gum you without his dentures. Yeah.
I had Jell-O today.
That sounded like a decrepit Bill Cosby, which to be fair is Bill Cosby all the time these days. He's decrepit and hopefully he'll be invalid soon.
Chewing ain't doing.
Another thing that this paragraph eventually gets wrong is the history we saw in Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge slightly invalidates it. Because it says he's a former teacher of Gruntilda's, but in that game, he was actually a novice shaman, while Gruntilda seemed more fully established as a witch and had already moved into Spiral Mountain, evicted the Jinjos and the Church of Jiggy Wiggy, and was starting to construct her lair. So here's how I reconciled the original paragraph in the instruction manual with the history we saw in the intervening years. So I believe that Mumbo wasn't actually Gruntilda's Obi-Wan. I think this is going to be one of those like retcons where, Obi-Wan claims Yoda was his teacher, but then it turns out not really. He was only his like part-time educator when he was a toddler, waving around his lightsaber in the Jedi Temple. No, Mumbo wasn't Grunny's teacher. They actually had a mutual mentor who was an unseen master shaman shaman, tomato, in the area of Spiral Mountain, or the area that became Grunny's lair. So it's worth pointing out that in the actual games, Mumbo claims he's attended, and I quote, the Handsome Shaman Institute. So I don't know if this is just a self-aggrandizing kind of lecherous line he uses on women. More on that and Mumbo's relationship with the opposite sex a little bit later. Or maybe it actually was the program that he and Gruntilda were taught under by this unseen shaman. But whatever the case, I think Grunny's Revenge clearly portrays them to, at the very least, be magic contemporaries versus mentor and pupil. So if that's the case, then Gruntilda kind of still betray Mumbo.
The way I see it is, it says a former teacher, so he could have been her teacher while he was a novice, and maybe he just she sucked and he sucked.
The thing about Mumbo is he still clearly sucks in 1997. I mean, 1998, excuse me. He can still do a better job at transforming things into other things than I can, but I think
he was never good, so he can still be a teacher and be a novice at the same time. His greatness has been exaggerated through history due to his own embellishment. He could have even written his own description in the instruction manual,
I'm willing to accept that either they had a teacher or Mumbo tried to teach Gruntilda right after he got a shaman license.
She got better than him, I think, is what I feel.
Yeah, well, she had already been well-versed in the dark arts. Her training was almost complete by the time she got to Spiral Mountain because she had probably traveled the world. Remember, she originates from Twycross, as seen on the Rusty Bucket, her and her sisters.
Well,
so she probably mastered various forms of magic, including witchcraft, and wanted to complete her training by studying under a shaman in the Rare Archipelago. And
it's funny, though, that she's into magic, but she uses a machine to transform herself.
That's Klungo's doing. Klungo is her kind of science advisor.
Gotcha.
She's more interested in power than she is being an expert at anything, so she takes any advantage she can get. And so Klungo uses this kind of alchemy between science and the black arts.
Well, maybe that transformer machine ran on Mumbo magic or some sort of item, and that's why she pretended to be a student briefly so she could get some from him or something. Hey, we're fan wanking here, right? Might as well wank all over the place.
Well, it's possible. We'll get into their relationship a little bit more too, because it's interesting. So whatever the case may be, I think Gruntilda still betrayed Mumbo. And my explanation is, rather than transforming his face into a skull, the easier explanation is she just scarred him. She hideously burned or mangled his face, so much so that he vainly decides to wear a mask.
What if it's a Dr. Doom situation where he's not that mangled, he's just really vain?
Perhaps. And, that might be a good gag in the series finale of Banjo-Kazooie when he takes off his mask.
He's beautiful.
And it's just... Yeah. He's maybe it's Fabio. Maybe that's the twist. It's Fabio.
Fabio Jumbo?
Circa 1998. Yeah. Maybe that is Fabio's last name. I haven't looked it up ever, because who the fuck cares?
He is Jumbo.
We think. I don't know. I've never seen him hang dong. We can talk about, well, maybe Mumbo was scarred. Maybe his face is hideous, or maybe he's just beautiful and incredibly vain. Vega from Street Fighter 2 is another example.
Maybe he just looks like Clint Howard under that thing.
Hey, I would not kick Clint Howard out of bed. In my opinion, he's the most beautiful Howard.
That's true. He's the best director of the Howards.
I'm looking forward to Solo, a Star Wars story. I don't care.
Dude, I love the Han Solo film, Solo.
It sounds like you're ready to go solo here, talking about how much you want to wank.
Yeah, I don't know. I on the list of Star Wars films, I would rank the Han Solo film Solo so low on that list.
We're not doing another Star Wars conversation this season, I can tell you that much. So whether Mumbo has been scarred or not, it doesn't really answer the question of what the fuck is Mumbo Jumbo? Because his body defies all reasoning with what we know about the species in the rare archipelago. Now, the most popular fan theory, one that I really supported back in the day, was that Mumbo, this is the easiest explanation, Mumbo is a Jinjo. Because his body looks like he could be a pink Jinjo. And come to find out, Ed Bryan confirms that they built him on a Jinjo body. So that's how they kind of constructed Mumbo. But then Ed Bryan put the dagger in our hearts and said, no, he's not a Jinjo.
Maybe he's not a Jinjo anymore, is what he meant.
What, you think he transformed himself into something else?
I don't know. I think he might be related to those blue goblin guys in his level that yell and then run at you.
That's another possible explanation. I'm glad you brought that up. But the only thing that might contradict that
is that
in Grunny's Revenge, we saw where the Gruntlings and various monsters that Gruntilda utilizes, we saw where they were born. And that's in Bad Magic Bayou. Are
those Gruntlings, though? That's the question.
They're related.
Okay. Okay, they're Grublins.
So I would say they're related to Gruntlings then.
Oh, yeah, this is where I got that idea from. In the beta version of Banjo-Kazooie, the Grublins were originally colored light blue and resembled Mumbo Jumbo, leading some players to believe that Mumbo Jumbo may have been a Grublin prior to having his face turned into a skull. Also, the red feathers on top of their heads greatly resemble those sprouting from Mumbo's skull.
Well, of course, that's in the beta, and of course, that was not the case in the final one. I mean, we can use...
It could be a hint as to the intent, though. You never know.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any intent for Mumbo other than let's just come up with a cool design.
Yeah.
And I think it maybe wasn't the intention back in 1998, but... Rare definitely kind of celebrates the fact that nobody knows what the fuck Mumbo is. And speaking of Star Wars, this is very similar to how George Lucas is with Yoda. He purposely instructed the writers and contributors to the Star Wars Expanded Universe never to come up with or say what Yoda's species is.
But they do, don't they?
No, they never. They still haven't.
I remember reading what it was, and there's a female Yoda, too.
There's a female Yoda, but they still don't say what the species is.
Really? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it was fan conjecture that Yoda's species were the Wills, but that's not actually the case.
Oh, okay.
So,
they were actually the Willows, if you ask Clint Howard.
So anyway, I think that Rare kind of takes delight in it, much like George Lucas took delight in it. And because of that, we will never know. But, and it's possible, Mumbo is a Kremling. Or it's possible he is some unseen species that's unique to the Rare Archipelago, and we don't know. And at this point, it really doesn't matter, but the ambiguity of it is definitely intriguing. And because, it was intended by Rare, according to Lee Loveday and Scribes, that at the end of Banjo-Kazooie, Mumbo would take his skull off. They would make do on what was promised in the instruction manual. And
I feel like they just fell in love with his look too much and just kept it.
Well, Lee Loveday said he looked rubbish without the skull.
Oh, interesting.
But that says to me then they actually did model him. So somewhere deep within Rare is the image of Mumbo without a skull, which would settle, or at least partially settle, what he is, or at least what he isn't.
Yeah.
And that fascinates me. So next time I'm at Rare, whether through an invite or whether I break in at night, I'm definitely going to gas everyone and try to comb the computer archives, the old floppy disk, and see what I can find. I bet the old floppy disk is what Fabio refers to his junk as now. He's getting up there in age.
Maybe.
He's a man of the 90s, too. So he would, of course, refer to floppy disk whenever he can, because, that's what you did in the 90s. All right, let's get into the timeline of Mumbo Jumbo, the chronological timeline. So this is what's interesting about the Banjo-Kazooie series. So bear with me. Banjo-Kazooie was obviously the first game. Banjo-Tooie was the sequel. Banjo-Kazooie Grunny's Revenge was the third game released for the Game Boy Advance in 2003, but it was a midquel between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. However, that game also featured time travel, and the bulk of the game featured the Banjo and Kazooie from between Kazooie and Tooie, going back in time 20 years to 1978, where they met earlier iterations of several cast members of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, chief among them Mumbo Jumbo. So the Mumbo we know in Banjo-Kazooie Grunny's Revenge is not a midquel Mumbo, although he does appear briefly in the beginning and end of the game. He's the one who sends Banjo back in time to chase Gruntilda, who also time traveled. But for the majority of the game, the Mumbo we interact with is the 1978 Mumbo. And so that is the earliest appearance we have of Mumbo Jumbo in the Donkey Kong universe, at least timeline-wise. You got it?
Yeah, it's absurd, but I love it. That's why I love it.
Yeah, I love nonsense time travel. It's why Lost Season 5 is my favorite season of Lost. And it's why I love the Back to the Future trilogy. It's why my favorite Batman story is the Return of Bruce Wayne, where he goes back to caveman times and starts a Batman caveman tribe. It's nonsense, and I fucking love it. It's worth pointing out that this means Mumbo first met Banjo and Kazooie in 1978. So Mumbo met Banjo-Kazooie before Banjo-Kazooie met Mumbo. Are you keeping up with me?
No.
So they time travel back to 1978 when Mumbo is a novice, as we previously established, and he lived in several Mumbo's pads around the Spiral Mountain area. Yeah, this is Mumbo, a younger Mumbo, but he's wearing the skull. He's wearing the full skull helmet seen in Banjo-Tooie, so that seemed to be the first one he actually wore canonically was the Banjo-Tooie skull, and he would eventually occasionally switch off to the half skull from Banjo-Kazooie.
Now, Banjo and Kazooie travel back in time via Mumbo's magic, right?
Exactly.
So that means he can time travel too. So how do we know in any game which version of Mumbo we're talking to?
I think we just have to look towards creator intent.
But Banjo-Kazooie, the fact that his skull suddenly changes, that could be an older Mumbo where the back fell off of his skull and he's a little weirder looking and he's just time traveling during that game.
Well, maybe there's going to be a future game where they time travel back into the events of Grunny's Revenge while they were time traveling. And we'll get all sorts of delightful just contradictions and time-space continuum fuckery.
That sounds like a DKU Comics idea.
Hey, there we go.
Crisis on Infinite Grunties? I don't know.
Terrible name. We'll workshop that. We'll just go with creator intent for now. And I believe the creator intent was that this was young Mumbo, 1978. It's worth pointing out the way he decorates his quote-unquote pad. And he's a real man of the 1970s. He has animal skin carpets, rugs. He has a green lava lamp. And he also has a disco ball, and the disco ball actually comes down whenever he transforms.
Oh, wow.
Banjo. Yeah. So it's worth pointing out that all of that stuff was, I believe, designed of Pete Hentz, who did some of the artwork for Grunny's Revenge, including the Tip Top Suite. It's also worth pointing out. Yeah, the whole the whole 70s aesthetic was definitely driven by Hentz. And I also want to point out that it seems a little bit weird for the world that Banjo-Kazooie and Mumbo inhabit that animal rugs would be a thing. It would be because, bearskin rugs. He doesn't have a bearskin rug, but I think they're
isn't he grilling burgers at the end of the game?
In Banjo-Kazooie?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that too. So
they eat animals of some kind.
Yeah,
it could be those oxen from his Mumbo's Mountain.
the whole like aspect of like meat eating and animal products in the Donkey Kong universe is actually a good episode topic that I might want to table for a later date, because the whole politics of
it's like the Goofy Pluto thing. I feel like there's lesser animals within the talking animal community.
There are, like, the animal buddies are definitely considered like lesser animals, but you wouldn't like eat the village idiot, right? Like if somebody has a really low IQ, you're not going to say, "Oh, it's perfectly okay if we grill him up, make sausages out of him." That's disturbing, Nick. And like, okay, how would you like it, Nick? How would you like it if, let's say, I murdered you, skinned you whole, and used your carcass as tasteful decor in my home? And don't think I haven't thought about it, because I think about it every time we do one of these podcasts together. How would you feel about that?
I would say a lovely tribute to Ed Gein. I appreciate it.
You know, I'm not going to wear you. I'm not going to wear you like a dress. Don't think I haven't thought about that either. It just, you know, your skin is white and I can't wear you after Labor Day.
True.
Animal carpets, disco ball, the whole tacky 9 yards. And Mumbo's early transformations in the game include a mouse. He turns Banjo into these. A mouse, a candle, an octopus, and a miniature tank, which is the most powerful he can muster. So it's worth pointing out that all of these transformations are relatively tiny, and I like that he has nothing like really grandiose yet, because this is just him starting out. So yeah, he can transform you into a little baby octopus, but nothing too great. And to be fair, in Banjo-Kazooie, doesn't really transform me in anything huge either.
Do you have a favorite transformation in this one?
Well, the one that I always think of is the candle, because of the tasteful Hanukkah image I've made with its render. We actually asked Rare. I remember, maybe it was Chad, maybe it was Ozzy Ben. One of us asked Lee Loveday, "Hey, do you have the render of Banjo as a candle?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And he sent us this enormous file that was like, took up half the memory on our computer. So it was like, oh, okay, great. We have the most high-res version of Banjo Candle anywhere outside of Rare. And so that's the one I have the most fondness for. But honestly, in-game, probably the octopus is the most fun.
Cool.
What about you, Nick? Mr. Grunny's revenge expert.
I like the candle a lot visually. I think it's a cool idea. They're all pretty fun for different reasons, though.
I like when I use the candle. It always makes me think about how Marilyn Monroe lived her life. And Princess Diana, too. The two of them really lived their lives like a Mumbo transformed bear into candle in a breezy locale. We could do a song for that when we form Wet Thoughts.
Yeah, we should do a song called Kremling Rock.
Barrel Rocket Man.
Barrel Rocket Man, that's a good one. Hold Me Closer, Tiny Kong.
Leon, as in the character from Star Wolf.
Doesn't he have a song where he calls someone a bitch?
The bitch is back, yeah.
Oh, the bitch is back, yeah. That's
Nick! Fuck!
Oh,
Nick!
No! Oh, no!
Your bitch punch card!
No!
You already... No!
No!
Okay.
What happens
now?
What?
I'll give you a pass. I'll give you a pass because it's Elton John's fault.
I was referencing Elton John. I was referencing the John.
Okay. You were. So it's his fault. We'll penalize him. I'm sure he'd love it. And we'll hold it against him whenever he comes on the Kongversation.
Hold what against him?
What I think we'll do is whenever Elton John
wait.
gets on the Kongversation.
B. Speaking of B.
Well, hold on there, Tiny Dancer. Let's wait. We're not done with Granny's Revenge.
But that was a Granny Revenge reference I was making. Honeybee.
Oh, that's right. See, I thought you were talking about the transformation in Banjo-Kazooie.
I was talking about the literal next bullet point on the document.
Oh, I think this orchard is a little bit too angry right now.
You're drinking Willow Woods, or what's that Kirby character? Is he Willow Woods? No, what's his name?
That's the Conquer locale.
No, what's the Wispy Woods? Sorry. You're drinking his, his sap. Yeah, Willow Woods is Conquer. I even did a cover of the song. I'm kind of out of it right now.
Tastes like every Kirby stage in Smash Brothers. I know that's that. Don't call in. I know he had a minecart stage and he had the fountain stage. Fuck off. Fuck off, everyone.
I found that very Great Cave offensive.
I'm done with your bullshit. Oh, Hyle doesn't know anything about any other games outside of the Donkey Kong universe. Yeah, I'm fucking ignorant, all right? I'm proud of it. I'm ignorant in America. That's what we do in America. Fuck you! So, Mumbo tried to fuck a bee.
Oh, man, that better be on a highlight reel someday.
Every Kongversation episode is a highlight reel.
True.
Every goddamn second. Honeybee, it's worth pointing. So Honeybee was first introduced in Banjo-Tooie, but canonically, we first meet her in Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge, because she's apparently in her 40s at the very least in Banjo-Tooie. She looks good for her age, I gotta say. Because I've never met a bee in their 40s, so any bee that's not dead and is around.
She must not have stung anybody yet.
So maybe she didn't have sex with Mumbo. Well, maybe Mumbo stung her.
The name Honey Bee just brings to mind like a badass blaxploitation character.
That could be our next YouTube project.
This summer, watch out, suckers. She's Honey Bee. Rated R.
You know, maybe we actually shouldn't do that.
Yeah, maybe not.
Mumbo's a bit of a pervert, and this is an aspect of his character that we will be bringing up. But
how is he a pervert? Just because he's attracted to a sexy bee?
He hits on nearly every woman in the Banjo-Kazooie franchise, sans Kazooie.
I don't know if that's perverted. That's more just like out of line.
I think Mumbo definitely sexually harasses people.
It's innocent. Look at that face in Banjo-Tooie. But if you look at the Kazooie face, it's guilty.
I think he did have relations with Honeybee, though, because Honeybee did seem... She seemed like standoffish at first, but then when they get back to... This is at the end of the game, by the way. And for more on this, check out our Donkey Kong Universe After Dark video on YouTube.
Or don't.
Well, or don't. Honeybee went back to Mumbo's pad, and Mumbo and her like started dancing together, and he was like, "You've got to show me your bee dance." And they were very...
wow.
It was suggestive, obviously, for an E-rated game. It's not the most suggestive...
He gave the bee the D.
It's not the most suggestive Rare's, ever been,
No
even in
way.
an E-rated game, but I think they definitely did the deed back in 1978.
That sounds like a good start to a Wet Thought song. They did the deed back in 78. He gave her the old Buck Bumble. That's an N64 game that no one talks about.
No, except now, and referencing two beloved N64 characters fornicating violently in the 70s. Whatever they had was just a fling, a sting fling.
A sting.
Yeah. So, because 22 years later, when we catch back up with Honeybee in the present, she doesn't acknowledge Mumbo or talk about the time they made the beast with a back that has wings protruding from it. But on the timeline, the next time we see Mumbo is the first time we saw Mumbo, and that's summer of 1998, June specifically, with the original Banjo-Kazooie. This is when Mumbo is quite a bit more established as a shaman, so much so that his name precedes him. He lives in an area that's even been dubbed Mumbo's Mountain. And it's worth pointing out, too, he also has skulls in some of the other worlds that are connected to Grunty's lair. Bubble Gloop Swamp, Freezeezy Peak, Mad Monster Mansion, Click Clock Wood, and Grunty's lair itself, in the cemetery entrance to Mad Monster Mansion.
Interestingly enough, one of my earliest posts on DK Vine was about the skull placements, because I was replaying Banjo and I was thinking, like, are all these basically portals to one central skull somewhere? And then, in Tooie, one of the skulls has like a secret passageway. I don't know, that just is an interesting topic.
I think the intention here is they are definitely different skulls. It's interesting, though, because in Donkey Kong Country 3, I believe the intention is that it's all one central save cave for Wrinkly, and that you're going through tunnels to get back to it. I believe that was specified in the instructions or maybe the player's guide or something. But yeah, I think especially in Banjo-Tooie, because there's clearly major differences in the architecture of some of the skulls. So anyway, the transformations that Mumbo came up with 20 years later are the termite, the alligator, the walrus, Goo Goo Gajoob, a pumpkin, which people mock, but every time when it's October, who's laughing now? And
how could you mock the pumpkin?
People think it's... Well, it is like a weird choice when you consider they had been animals up until that point, and now it's a googly-eyed pumpkin.
It fits the world, though, the level.
Yeah, it does, but anyway. And then there's also a bee, no doubt inspired by that Night of Passion with Honeybee.
Wow, yeah. It's probably what his son would have looked like.
Yeah, it would have been what his son looked like if he could have mustered his own honey from his D that night.
Yeah.
This is where Mumbo and Banjo and Kazooie actually start to develop a friendship. Obviously, Mumbo had to have remembered them from their time.
Does he introduce himself? Doesn't he? He says, "Me, Mumbo."
Yeah, but it had been 20 years since he saw them, so you know, I like to imagine.
I mean, Bottles also introduces himself, and they have a framed photo of him in their living room.
Which I think I fan wanked that away. I realize that is the secret word of this episode, fan wank. But I've always explained that away as Tootie just like gave that to Banjo and Kazooie as a worthless gift, and Banjo humored her Tootie, even though they had no idea who this fucking mole was.
Or Tootie is friends with him, and they don't know him.
Right, exactly. Because we know Tootie was friends with Bottles because, oh, hi, Mr. Mole. That's my Tootie voice. I spent years perfecting it. You're welcome. The Mumbo Banjo-Kazooie friendship actually starts here. And I guess maybe Mumbo could have not said anything about the fact that they would later meet in 1978. Later relative to Banjo-Kazooie, not to him. Because he didn't want to, like, risk screwing up the time-space continuum. Let's talk about who else Mumbo fucks in Banjo-Kazooie. So let's talk about the game over screen. Well, it's worth...
What about the washing machine?
Okay, well, I'm really, really excited to talk about intercourse because I am a pervert. So
the washing machine, in the next game, shoots out knickers, skivvies, or whatever.
That's true. And you do need a washing machine after you've shot off in your own. So, good lord. The washing machine is a transformation he's working on, I guess, in Banjo-Kazooie.
It's a little tease.
Yeah, a little strip tease. And he accidentally transformed. It shows he's still pretty shoddy as a shaman. He might have a whole area named after him, but he's still not perfect, and he's still sloppy, and he doesn't seem to take a lot of pride in perfectionism. Good lord, this Angry Orchard is really taking its toll. So he kind of half-asses it from time to time, and sometimes when he's trying to transform them into, say, a walrus, he'll accidentally make them into a washing machine. And
I want in the next Banjo for him to accidentally like fuse them together into like this the Fly or the Thing style like monstrosity.
That would be awesome.
And then he's like, "Oops, me see too much Cronenberg."
They could always do that in Tukalele with Dr. Puzz, because at least that has like this whole science. They make jokes in Ukulele about like how Laylee in particular is very nervous about having her DNA reconfigured. So I would like to see that made manifest as like a secret transformation akin to like Dragon, Kazooie, and Tooie. But yeah, he's got this washing machine transformation, and he'll actually like do it full on for you if you complete the final Bottles puzzle with the aforementioned picture in Banjo and Kazooie's home. And then go to the Treasure Trove Cove sandcastle and put in the code. And then Mumbo will be like, all right, make you into a washing machine. And it's essentially Banjo and Kazooie as their normal movesets, only in the body of a washing machine. So it's a little bit different than Humba's version of the washing machine spell. They can't shoot out underwear, but they have their full range of normal movesets, including Kazooie can fly while staying in the backpack. So you've got to love that.
Whoa.
Yeah. Mumbo also promises a T-Rex spell. He's apparently got a T-Rex spell in his assortment of spells.
I love that they actually like pay off these teases.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We can bitch all we want about Stop and Swap being a feature that was dropped for no fault of their own, really, but they really did pay off every other gag from Kazooie that was hinted at for the sequel. Of course, we never really see Mumbo's version of the T-Rex spell. We only see Humba Wumba's, but
Maybe she taught him.
maybe he stole it from her. Like, he snuck into her wigwam and stole some of her best spells that he could never come up with on his own. So before we get to Banjo-Tooie, I do want to hit up the live stream and see what some people are saying about Mumbo Jumbo. So we got Cameron, of course, beloved DK Vine staffer. Cameron's talking about the sexual politics of Mumbo Jumbo. And so he says that he could be wrong, but he doesn't think he ever hits on Humba, at the very least. We'll try to touch upon that, Cameron. As far as his identity goes, he says that Jam Jars has a great line in Banjo-Tooie. He says, "Get out of here, loser. I only teach bears and birds, not ellipses, whatever it is you are." So
That's good.
Yeah.
Although, as far as him and Humba Wumba, I could have sworn I heard they did some tub thumping back in their day. They got up and then they went down again.
I got the reference. I got the reference. All right. 2 years later. It was the year 2000, the final year of the Clinton administration, a year before 9/11. Mumbo became good friends with Banjo and Kazooie and Bottles.
Well, he puts up with them at least.
Well, yeah. Well, good friends enough that they have regular poker nights. So,
well, it's a poker night. It could be their first poker night for all we know.
It seemed to be very familiar, though, and you wouldn't just start playing poker with people you had an acquaintanceship with back in 2 years prior to this. Like, I'd imagine they had constant meetups between now and then. Sure, I mean, maybe it wasn't always poker. Maybe they played whatever the 2000 equivalent of Settlers of Catan was, or maybe it was gaming night, or like video game night. Maybe they played GoldenEye. I don't really know. Bottles died. Gruntilda returned during this poker night and blew up Banjo and Kazooie's home and the picture of Bottles as well. Good riddance. And
Bottles is just fucked over in Tooie.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
just so fucked over.
Well, and it gets even worse when you later learn that his wife left him because she couldn't cope with the fact that he was resurrected from the dead. Like, it freaked her out so much.
Oh, what the hell? Is that in Nuts and Bolts?
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah, it's completely fucked.
She didn't like the undead D, I guess.
Bottles' life goes to hell, yeah. So
Poor Bottles.
Well, I mean, Nuts and Bolts really, like, none of the characters really came out of that in a better place. Just, like, Rare was brutal on the whole cast.
God.
Like, and we'll get into what happened to Mumbo. I mean, Mumbo didn't escape unscathed either. But, yeah, I like how...
He had to wear Redneck Kong's clothes. He was in such a bad place.
I like how Rare characters in general, they go through the same turmoil that real humans do, in that they may be riding high upon their debut, but inevitably they will hit a hard time in their life. And, like, Nuts and Bolts just caught up with everybody, and everybody, for the most part, was in a worse place than they were when we last left them. So, anyway, back to Tooie, though. We're jumping ahead here. So, following Bottle's death, Mumbo became a more active participant in the adventure. He didn't just hide in his skulls all the time. He actually got out and helped Banjo-Kazooie with some on-foot missions. And unlike Banjo-Kazooie, he had skulls in every area of the game. He had them in Mayhem Temple, Glitter Gulch Mine, Witchy World, Jolly Rogers Lagoon, Pterodactyl Land, Grunty Industries, Hailfire Peaks, Cloud Cuckoo Land, as well as, I believe, the Cliff Top and the Isle of Hags.
So there isn't one level that he doesn't have one in?
No, so it's not like Banjo-Kazooie where you just go like 2 worlds without seeing Mumbo.
It's sort of weird. As a kid, I was like, wait, I've done everything except find Mumbo. Where's Mumbo? And I'm like, oh, he's not in this world?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Mumbo does not transform Banjo in this game. Instead, he uses his magic to alter the landscape in a world in some way, in some small or significant way.
Very slowly, usually.
It's worth pointing out, too, he achieved his magic in this game via globos, these small, like, gizmo, Furby-type creatures that are magically...
Delicious?
bursting. Well, they might be delicious. We don't know. I'm sure Mumbo's tried to eat one. Maybe that's what he was grilling up in the other Banjo-Kazooie.
Glow burgers.
Maybe that's what Big Al serves in Witchy World.
I can't wait for Globo Destroyo to finally come out.
That's a joke we might have to use. I might have to pitch that to Jamie Guy. So, Mumbo, like I said, he uses globos, and in Banjo-Kazooie, he used Mumbo tokens. I was never quite clear. I guess Mumbo tokens were like magically charged items, and that's why he required them. Like, I always just, I guess at a certain point in my youth, I assumed that he just pawned them or something. Like he used them for some sort of monetary value. But no, I guess they were like magic totems that he needed to really like channel magic and because Mumbo can perform magic without any like items, but the most he could do is like electrocute or like use his wand as a taser. He can do like
the globos probably didn't even give him like power. He just wanted them. He's lazy and he won't do it until you give him one.
Perhaps, but
he just wanted to collect them all.
Yeah, there are like rules in the Banjo-Kazooie world for magic that explains like why, somebody like Mumbo isn't essentially just a walking god. Like he requires something and he also requires Mumbo pads, not to be confused with Mumbo's pad, which he had to stand on these, which it's never really spelled out in the game, but I guess they're areas of great magical concentration or something.
Resonance or something.
Yeah, like ley lines and shit, right? So that's that. So he could like perform these grand feats so long as he has a globo and he's standing on a Mumbo pad, which we'll get into. Let's get into the spells and then get into one of the spells, which creates somewhat of a plot hole in the game. Mumbo in Banjo-Tooie, these are the feats he performs. Like Jesus Christ, he can heal the sick. Like Jesus Christ, he can summon a giant golden Goliath that can walk around and smash shit. I believe that happened in the Bible, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite Bible verse, actually.
He can levitate something heavy, like a boulder or even a capsized train.
Jesus moved the boulder away to get out of the cave.
That's right. There we go. He could electrically charge a piece of machinery.
Jesus inspired Thomas Edison. He was a devout Christian.
He could oxygenate the water.
Water into wine, essentially.
He could enlarge his surroundings, like the steps that resembled the ejaculate of a penis, or even Humba's wigwam.
I didn't see The Last Temptation of Christ, so maybe there's something in that one.
Yeah, with Mary Magdalene. He could send out an EMP to...
oh, yeah. Straight up Jesus right there.
Yeah. I remember when Jesus caused the New York blackout in, 2003?
Well, the Ark of the Covenant was kind of an EMP, and, Jesus' dad made that, so...
That's right. All in the family. He could revive the recently deceased.
Hell yeah. Jesus did it to himself.
And he could make it rain, bitches.
Jesus was very wealthy.
I said bitch, but it's okay because Elton John set the precedent. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay for this episode.
But Jesus didn't need a Mumbo pad. Mumbo does.
Well, he might have had Jesus-y pads. We don't know. That just because it's not in the Bible doesn't mean it's not canon. Fanwank your faith, Nick.
Fanwank your reach out and touch faith.
This is inevitably DK Vine is just going to eventually lead to me becoming a Joel Osteen type preacher. Not because I have any affinity towards religion. It's just because I want to make a lot of money and I want to let people drown while I'm in my safe and secure mega church. So,
well, that's what God did to Noah, so he's just being biblical.
So the plot hole I was referring to was the one about reviving the recently deceased.
Huh. Okay. So, why didn't he do that to bottles?
So here's the thing. You do need a Mumbo pad and a Globo to bring back the recently dead. So he could do it for the little baby alien, the little gray who died in Hailfire Peaks, because it was right there, right in front of a Mumbo pad. But there is a small plot hole here. Why couldn't Banjo just stick Bottle's charred corpse in his backpack, hike over to Hailfire Peaks?
I already have the answer.
What's that?
Nobody wanted him alive.
Well, maybe not like consciously, but maybe in their subconscious, they were perfectly okay with Bottles being dead.
I mean, Kazooie is joking about it to his wife.
Well, Kazooie's just a heinous person in general, a nasty
Were you about
woman.
to call her a bitch?
Look, it's on the tip of my tongue because we're using it so freely this episode. It just...
Elton John set the precedent.
She's a nasty woman, okay? Nasty. So, because
I love Kazooie's new book, What Happened. It's really good.
Kazooie, mocks Bottle's death right in front of his wife, who doesn't even know he's dead yet. So not a lot of tact from the red-crested Breagle, but I think this is just an oversight on the developer's part. Like, there should have been a line of dialogue that at least put a lampshade on it. Not a skin lampshade, Nick, okay? Don't worry. I don't have any designs to turn your hide into a designer lamp. Well, ideally, I would dye it to create that whole Tiffany style. It's the Tiffany lamp. Get some nice purples, maybe some greens in there. That would look just wonderful in my den.
Yeah, but you haven't given this any thought.
I haven't given it any thought, and shame on you for assuming otherwise. Yeah, I think this is just Banjo's a bit dim, Kazooie self-centered, Mumbo, had his own stuff going on.
He's a little arrogant.
Nobody thought to bring Bottles back this way. And there's also the possibility, that Mumbo's revive spell can't work on something that's as hideously mangled as Bottles was. Maybe only something as powerful as the B.O.B., the big old blaster, could bring Bottles back. Maybe this spell is... Because all the wee little gray child, the wee little alien baby... All that happened to it was it fell from the spaceship, and fell from a great distance and hit the ice. So its body was still intact and preserved well by the ice. He also brought back Saberman, by the way, and it's not really clear if Saberman was fully deceased or if he was just like cryogenically frozen. But either way, both their bodies were in not tip top, but tip top shape. So I think Bottles was I mean, had they buried Bottles, had they brought his remains back to his widow, that would have been a closed casket funeral. He was almost cremated, essentially. So yeah, maybe that's the reason. And maybe that kind of absolves everyone of the guilt of not thinking about their dead friend, who they could have brought back readily over the actual events of the game.
Or they just didn't want him alive.
Or they just, because they're terrible people. But if it was Conker, I could definitely just say, oh, well, Conker's an asshole, so sure. But yeah, for as awful as Kazooie can be and as dumb as Banjo can be, I like to think at their hearts, they're good people. So
they were just thinking, hey, we'll do it when this is all over. We'll get back and do that.
We'll get around to it. Let the maggots have a little bit of a feast first. They're thinking of the maggots, the ground eels, as they call them.
Slipknot fans?
Let's talk about Humbo Wumba, as Cameron Regal alluded to in the live stream chat.
I get knocked down.
Humbo Wumba, what is her relationship with Mumbo? So let's set the stage, because we talked about Gruntilda, the student. We talked about Mumbo, the student or possible teacher. We talked about a maybe unseen shaman. There's also another magic practitioner in the Rare Archipelago, specifically the Isle o' Hags / Spiral Mountain sector of the archipelago. So Humbo Wumba is a stereotypical, at least at first, Native American who is a medicine woman a la Jane Seymour from the 1990s. And she moved to the Rare Archipelago because that was like the happening place for those who do the crazy spells. You know, in Harry Potter, they've got, you know, the secret world of wizardry. You know, they got the schools like Hogwarts and the other places that I don't know because I'm not a Harry Potter fan. And you know, they've got the place where what's his face, big lips, floppy hair. He went in New York City and he had
Fabio?
Fantastic Beast, and he found them.
Oh.
He found them somewhere. You know, what's his name? The Diet Benedict Cumberbatch. What's his I don't care what he's what's his Edward Bumberfuck.
It's Eddie Redmayne.
I was getting hung up on Cumberbatch. All right.
Benedict Buckbumble.
So anyway, Humbo Wumba went to the hot spot for those who practice magic, either shamanistic magic or black magic. Humba and Mumbo hate each other. Humba is very much like a professional when it comes to magic use. Mumbo is, like I said, kind of just slovenly and lackadaisical about what he does with his spells.
But opposites attract sometimes.
Well, that Cameron was wondering, is there actually any hints towards a sexual chemistry between the two?
I thought there was at some point. Is there not?
I think the only thing that's like explicitly layered in the game is in Nuts and Bolts, where they're forced to play house as husband and wife in one of the Lord of Games twisted scenarios.
Oh, that's enough for me.
But that's not actually them being themselves. So,
but it's how the Lord of Games sees them, and he created Banjo-Tooie. So,
or he's a demigod who likes to fancy himself a creator. So I don't really.
Like the outsider.
I think it could just be that they hate each other because they have completely differing means of going about their profession. You know, Humba is very much by the book. She does a great job. She doesn't screw up her spells. And Mumbo just kind of walks around with his dick in his hand. So, and I'm sure Mumbo might be attracted to Humbo Wumba, sure. But he never acts on it like he does with Honey Bee. So
his favorite Atari game is Custer's Last Stand.
Oh, I'm sure there's a fan game somewhere. I'm sure there's
Mumbo's Last Stand.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody, even if it never made its way online, somebody in their dark cellar of a sex dungeon, their exploit dungeon, they coded this game, or somebody's going to make it after this episode on their Raspberry Pi.
You made it, didn't you?
I don't know how to code. I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant and proud of it. I'm an American, Nick. I'm an American. I don't know how to do anything, and I complain about it. I complain when people do know how to do things, and I blame them when they come from other countries to take jobs I was never qualified for to begin with.
So anyway, Mumbo fucked a bee once.
Yeah, it was pretty hot, I bet. So we next see Mumbo in Banjo-Pilot, and that's 4.5 years later, 2005.
But anyway, Nuts and Bolts.
I'm looking at the live stream. Dustin says that Humba mentions Mumbo being her husband, but that's not part of their character in the level. Because they played husband and wife. I almost said honey and wife because I'm still so hung up on shipping Mumbo and Honey Bee now. But in Nutty Acres, they play husband and wife. But in the Terrarium of Terror, the sci-fi outer space chapter world in Nuts and Bolts, Humba says, "This sure to hit spot," as Humba's absent husband say. So,
now, does that mean it's Mumbo though? Could be someone else she's talking about.
But she's using the Mumbo vernacular. Like Yoda, he has a very particular way of speaking. I could look at this and say, surely they don't mean that Mumbo and Humba actually married off screen at some point after Banjo-Tooie, and
they could.
They could have, but I think this is just Humba calling back to Nutty Acres It is a piece of evidence, though, for those who might ship Mumbo and Humba, that maybe they eloped. I don't know. Now, she says absent husband, too, so maybe it was like a drunken Vegas-style marriage where they didn't, they thought it'd be good for a laugh, and then they realized, oh, fuck, but they haven't, actually, drawn up the divorce papers. They haven't gotten annulled yet, so maybe by absent husband, he's absent because he isn't in the level, because Mumbo doesn't play a sci-fi character in the Terrarium of Terror. I don't know. I'm leaning towards no, they're not actually husband and wife, because that would just be...
That'd be a weird way to reveal it.
Granted, if they revealed it, I'm sure they might do it in a kind of piss-take way like that. Because, that game really was like the baby of Lee Loveday. It sprung from his fertile loins.
You could ask him.
We could ask him on Twitter. You know what? Let's table this, because we're just gonna go round and round. We'll ask him when this episode comes out. We'll say, hey, are they actually married or not? And we'll see what happens. Knowing Rare, the way they operate, Lee, Chris Alcock, they're just going to fuck with our heads. But we could ask him all the same. We'll find out. Again, I'm leaning towards no, they're not married. She's referencing Nutty Acres as kind of a glib kind of, oh, my husband. It's, same thing like we kind of explain away K. Rool having a wife in DKC3 as, oh, he's just referencing a British sitcom. He's just being weirdly jocular right now. I think we went over this in the K. Rool character witness I did earlier in the year, where it came up, does K. Rool have a wife or not? Anyway, so speaking of nuts and bolts, it's funny where Mumbo winds up by 2008. So you know what happened in 2008, Nick, is there was a global recession, and the stock markets tanked. People lost everything. People lost their homes. People lost their careers, their businesses. And even though the Rare Archipelago is pretty kind of insulated from the rest of the world, it still affected them a little bit. As a result, Mumbo had to resort to becoming a mechanic to make ends meet.
I don't remember that in The Big Short.
I think it was somebody on the DK Vine forum, maybe Rock, who came up with that, and I was like, that's brilliant. Of course, Nuts and Bolts came out in 2008, right around the time of the stock market crashes. Of course, Mumbo became a mechanic because of that reason. He runs Mumbo's Motors in the game, and which is located in Showdown Town, and there's different interpretations of what Showdown Town is. We've had it, it's just a place on the Isle of Hags, or it's this godlike realm that exists between all video games that the Lord of Games inhabits. So
I think it's where all unborn babies go when they die. I'm still fighting with that fan wank.
Whether or not Showdown Town is a physical place on the Isle of Hags or it's just a metaphysical realm, he does have a Mumbo's Motors in Showdown Town. I presume he has them elsewhere because Mumbo, like Cranky, like the Kongs in general, they like to have multiple versions of the same locale. So it's probable that there's a Mumbo's Motors across the Isle of Hags. Maybe he's got it, in Spiral Mountain too. Well, he doesn't have it in Spiral Mountain because we see Spiral Mountain in that game. But maybe somewhere in Grunny's lair in those sealed off worlds. So Mumbo is also forced, as we alluded to play along with the Lord of Games scenarios where the characters, including Humba, Captain Blubber,
Alfred
Boggy.
Peacock.
Unfortunately, Alfred Peacock, the many great characters of Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge that were introduced in that game were not referenced in Nuts and Bolts, which I really have a feeling is why people hated the game so much, not for any other reason.
I said, for a game with a guy named Alcock, there was no cock, and that really made me mad.
What we need to do is we need to break into JonTron's YouTube channel and take down his Nuts and Bolts review, edit it just to be all about Alfred Peacock, and then put it back up. So yeah, Mumbo hates having to play along with the Lord of... he hates playing dress up. And by the way, this is Mumbo Jumbo wearing overalls, like denim overalls. So it's got to be bad if during this time period he hates having to take off those awful
My
overalls.
fan wank is like he hated Banjo-Pilot so much, like he killed Redneck Kong, took his clothes.
Oh, but he blames Redneck Kong because Redneck Kong did not live up to the bargain and pawned off the Pilot game onto the Banjo cast. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And I imagine he's also pissed off at Log because Mumbo's magic wrench that he used in Mumbo's Motors was stolen and re-gifted to Banjo-Kazooie.
Well, he steals stuff from Humba.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is clearly Mumbo's. It's got Mumbo's skull on it. It's clearly his mechanics.
Maybe it's like a brand of wrench that's sold around Showdown Town.
No, I think it's clearly supposed to be the equivalent to Mumbo's magic wand, only repurposed for the blue collar garage, you know?
Yeah.
And Banjo-Kazooie never give it back either because they still have it in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing with Banjo-Kazooie. I guess maybe Mumbo, after the events of Nuts and Bolts, either he got another one or he just gave up the whole mechanic thing. I'm not really sure because we don't see Mumbo again after Nuts and Bolts, like most of the Banjo cast, except for a very small, elusive cameo in Connect Sports Rivals. And this is technically his most recent appearance, even though he only appears off screen. He's sponsoring a bowling competition on Rivals Island for some reason. Maybe it's just I don't even know. I mean, Rivals Island is part of the Rare Archipelago, so I guess he's enough of a noteworthy figure that he can sponsor a bowling competition. And it's like a big deal. Guaranteed it was the best bowling competition that was ever sponsored by any shaman.
Watch IGN take that out of context.
I hope they do. Bring it on, bitches. Oh, so Elton John's fault. Elton
John set the precedent.
He did. All right, Nick. Well, that's where we last left Mumbo, 2014, sponsoring bowling tournaments on Rivals Island. We don't really know what he's up to now, if he's still working in the garage or if he's gone back to being a full-time local witch doctor. But let's examine the legacy of Mumbo Jumbo. So, do you think he was ruined by Banjo-Tooie?
Ruined. No, not at all. It's not the perfect version of him, I don't think, but he was neutered a little bit in his necessity, or reason of being.
Yeah, so the Mumbo in Banjo-Kazooie, the Mumbo that became a fan favorite and spurred Rare to make him somewhat playable in Banjo-Tooie, he was a slightly... He had a goofy side, absolutely. I mean, look at the game over screen. Look at his interactions with Banjo-Kazooie on the beach at the end. But he also was, somewhat sinister and mysterious. He had that Boba Fett factor where you wanted to know more about him, even though if you know more about him, it will inevitably wreck the character and his appeal. And to be fair, Rare has kept a lot of things under wraps, like what his species is, his true appearance,
whether or not he fucked a bee.
We're gonna lean on he hit that. But in Banjo-Tooie, he was more of just this. Well, for one, they changed his design. They cutesified him just a little bit. They emphasized his bigger eyes. They made his skull a little bit less threatening, and he was just a little bit more impish, cherubic.
I like his renders way more than his actual model in Tooie.
See, I like his in-game model more than I do his renders.
Interesting.
And it says nothing about us as people. But yeah, he was just this weirdo sexaholic in Tooie. And going forward, you got more diminishing returns. And granted, I still love the character of Mumbo. We won't be doing a character witness about him if, I absolutely loathe it. This isn't like character witness Bluster Kong.
No, yeah, he's one of my favorites.
I just think, obviously he lost a lot of momentum from Kazooie to Tooie, and I'm interested why. And, granted, it might not be anything related to Mumbo himself. It might just be, Banjo-Tooie came out, and at the time, people maybe were put off by it because it was a bigger game and it took a long time to traverse and it was a lot less linear. And that's something that
if he could do more when you played as him, it might not have been so lukewarmly received.
It felt a little bit, maybe I'm wrong here, but it felt a little bit like the design philosophies of Donkey Kong 64 creeping into Banjo-Tooie, because you had to go get this other character to perform this task before you have to go back as this other character and perform this. And there was a little bit of that, and maybe by 2000, after Donkey Kong 64, after we had deluded ourselves that Donkey Kong 64 is the greatest game of all time, maybe we, on a subconscious level, were tired of that. And
he wasn't really that fun to play with at all.
It was fun to shock baddies, but yeah, you're right. It was kind of a slog, and I think subconsciously we took out the sins of Donkey Kong 64 on Mumbo Jumbo and Banjo-Tooie, because looking back at his character, he was less spooky or whatever, but I still really love him. I love him in Grunny's Revenge. I think he's hilarious. I think it's fantastic that he fucked a bee. I love that about him. Bravo, Mumbo. Well played, sir. He's weird. He's an idiot some of the time. I like that we saw a more competent rival of his in Banjo-Tooie to put into perspective a little bit more about Mumbo's character himself. So much of Mumbo is actually informed by seeing how a shaman is supposed to operate with Humba Wumba. Looking at it, I think maybe we've been unfair to Mumbo, or I've been unfair to Mumbo. I think it's mostly the sin of actually getting to play as him that hurt him. And if we remove that from our mind, there were really no mistakes done with Mumbo. I don't like his character redesign in Tooie, but that's small stuff. I don't really like the Kong's character redesigns post-Rare, but I still love the Donkey Kong characters.
Yeah, Mumbo's great.
He is great. And, I don't think we've kind of danced around this a little bit, Nick, but
We danced
around this a little bit about the game over screen in Banjo-Kazooie. Now, obviously, the events of the game over screen never came to pass. Banjo and Kazooie defeated Gruntilda, and Tootie was saved from becoming a monstrous version of herself. But the game over screens in Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64, I think, have to be taken as possible canon, as in these are the events that would have happened had the hero fallen, a la Link. And whether or not I'm saying there's whole timelines dedicated to these game over screens, I don't know. But if the multiverse theory is correct and that there are universes for every possible choice we make, then surely there would be a universe in the Rare multiverse, the Donkey Kong multiverse, that would have these events as canon. And so that would be Banjo-Kazooie failing, Gruntilda sucking out Tootie's youth and beauty, transforming into sexy Gruntilda, and Mumbo rushing in to the transformation room and immediately propositioning Gruntilda for sex.
Immediately.
Considering Gruntilda is the woman that hideously scarred his face, what does it say about Mumbo's ethics that he's so willing to overlook 20 years of bad blood to insert his penis into this vile witch?
That'd be like Obi-Wan joining the dark side in A New Hope just because Vader has huge boobs or something.
Yeah. If Vader disrobed, took off his respirator and
Obi-Wan just puts the lightsaber away. He's like, fuck it, I'm joining.
Obi-Wan's eyes bug out, awooga, awooga.
That's Snow Moon.
He becomes more powerful than either of them could possibly imagine in bed. So what does that say about Mumbo, Nick?
He's shallow.
I just got done defending Banjo-Kazooie and Mumbo from being horrible people for not trying to revive bottles when they had a chance. Maybe Mumbo is just a narcissistic asshole who only cares about himself.
Leisure Suit Larry.
But it's not even like he's betraying Banjo and Kazooie here. He's betraying himself. This is his sworn enemy, the one who's responsible for him having to wear a skull every single day for 2 decades.
It's just a joke.
Although
it is what could have happened, I guess.
It's not just a joke. This is serious, Nick. This is Banjo-Kazooie. This is life and death we're talking about here. My whole life is built on this flimsy house of cards. We need to address this.
Well, Mumbo fucked a bee once.
But when I said at the beginning of the episode that he's just a lousy pervert, this is really what I meant.
Maybe he didn't know it was Grunty.
Yes, he did. He specifically refers to her as Grunty.
Oh, okay, never mind.
He's running into the lair he's got a flower in hand. Like, he didn't even
maybe
wait.
Back when he was her mentor, they were in love and it went sour, and that's what she used to look like before she got all saggy. And now maybe it's just, seeing her like that again.
Yeah, the thing is, he didn't even wait. Like, he heard through the grapevine that Banjo-Kazooie, failed. And so he grabbed the flower, he plucked the flower out of the earth, and he sprinted through Grunty's lair, and he rushed into the transformation chamber room. This is before he would even have a chance to see her. He rushed in there. Like, he was ready to fuck no matter what.
Ecum bonum.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.